Hello, hello, and welcome to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories here on K-Fred Radio. I'm Janet, and I am a birth mother. Have you ever thought about what it was like to be born in one country and then whisked away to a faraway land with people you don't know? Does that sound like the Wizard of Oz? Today we wander into the world of international adoption with my guest, Ivan Gastanaga. So, Ivan, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today because you do have an exciting story, one that people should hear, and everybody needs to know about all the adoption stories, right? To take the stigma away from it. So, please welcome, and let's begin.
Thank you, Jeanette. I'm so happy to be here in your podcast, Roots and Branches. Thank you so much for the invitation. As you said, my name is Ivan Gastanaga. I am originally from Spain, but I was born in Russia and adopted to Spain in 1991 by my adoptive parents. And um, I'm not that far from you. I am right now in Chicago, currently living in Chicago, married to my wife that is local, and we moved here 4 years ago exactly. And I do, as you mentioned, I do help people to find their biological families or biological relatives. And also I help them to find where they belong. And that's uh, a big question, an open big question in for adoptees and also for adoptive families.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. You were born in Russia. How long did you stay in Russia, and do you remember any part of that?
Mhm. No, I can't remember any part of my life in Russia. I was born in July um, 7th, 1990, and I was relinquished by my biological mother, I think a few days after birth, and I went directly to an orphanage, a baby house. The name in Russian is Dom Rебенка. It's like a house that you send all the babies. It's not only an orphanage; it's like a more like a daycare slash orphanage. And I was there in that institution for a year, 13 months. And I went to Spain in 1991. In that time, Moscow and Russia, in that time, belonged to the Soviet Union.
How did you end up with Spanish parents?
Well, my parents, they got married when they were 25, 26, 27. I don't know. In Santander is my hometown. It's a little city in the north of Spain, surrounded by beautiful mountains close to the sea. And they got married. They couldn't have kids, so they decided to adopt. In that time in Spain, it was a waiting list to adopt a newborn for, I don't know, maybe a decade, maybe 5 to up to 10 years. And they decided to try internationally, and they tried to adopt in other countries, um, Asia, South America, even in the United States and other countries. And they couldn't do that because they couldn't afford that adoption. But in that time, my aunt Berna, she was a journalist. Is my mom's sister. She was a journalist in the Soviet Union and in Eastern Europe, and she was uh, how to say correspondent in journalist in Moscow. She was writing about the fall of the Soviet Union in that time, and my parents asked her like, would you could you please help us to see if we can adopt a baby in Russia, because they knew that after Chernobyl a few years ago, there were many kids that were adopted to Europe, to United States, and also to Canada, but not in Russia. Spain and Russia, or the Soviet Union, they didn't have international adoption agreements in that time. So my parents, I mean aunt, they they figured out who to adopt me, and they found me in the orphanage. All the authorities, probably the local authorities in Moscow and in Russia, they chose the orphanage and they chose me, and that's why I ended up in Spain. Yeah, the adoption was very quick. I think it was between 4 and 5 months. It was, and I became the first ever Soviet child adopted by Spanish parents. And after me, uh, a few months after my adoption, the Soviet Union collapsed and the Russian Federation was born. And after that, thousands of kids, boys and girls, they become sons and daughters of Spanish parents as well.
So you made history by being the first.
I think
And you
so.
made the news too, right?
Yeah, in that time, because um, I was the first, the pioneer, something like that. They called me. Well, that's how the media in Spain and Russia they called us. Yeah, I was in the in some newspaper. Of course, internet wasn't a thing in that time in 1991, and of course, my face was in many newspapers, but not just my face. Today, it would be impossible to have a baby's face as it is in a newspaper because of the data protection laws. So you have to cover the face, to blur the face. And at that time, you know, uh, they didn't do that. But yeah, it was a big thing in Spain. Yeah.
What was life like growing up in Spain?
Well, I grew up in a small town close to Santander. Santander is a small city in the north of the country. Um, I grew up with my parents, with my siblings. Have two siblings who are adoptee too, but they were adopted domestically in Spain. They are not international. And yeah, I went to school very close to my house. I have a big family in both sides, mom's side and that side. I have 15 cousins in total, many uncles and aunts, loving grandparents, living great grandparents. And that time, I had the opportunity to meet four of my great grandparents alive, and I had a happy childhood. And I'm proud to say I remember my childhood as surrounded by happiness, family, friends, and you know, childhood, doing whatever you want. And but I always thought about my origins, of course, and about wow, like why I was adopted. um, and I had this question and in my concern growing up. Yeah.
When did you when were you able to start searching?
Of course, when I left high school. High school in Spain is between uh, 12 and 18 years old. It's different in Canada and the US, probably. So maybe at the age of 16, 17, 18, um, I really wanted to find where I belong and to whom I resemble with. I did want to know what my hair is dark, why I have this shape of my face is this, why my voice sound sounds like this, and I really wanted to know my origins, um, and I really wanted to know who was my birth mother and my birth father back in Russia. So I would say around the age of 18 years old is when I started to research about my um, adoption documents. Of course, they were handwritten. Many of them they were handwritten in Spanish that I could read in that time, but I also had to learn how to read Russian in that time. The internet translation services were like probably we didn't have those like Google Translator or anything when I was 18 years old. So I had to translate many documents with dictionaries just to know what's going on, what all these documents written in Russian with the Soviet stamp in the corner on the top of the document, and I have to learn Russian very soon. Yeah.
Were your adoptive parents or your parents supportive of you searching for your birth parents?
When I started the search, I didn't share what I was doing. Probably because it's something that we adoptees we have. It's like kind of trauma, and sometimes I don't know how to say in English that concept, but it's like when you have to decide between your biological family and your adopted family. How do you say that? Is when you are wondering what should I do? Should I tell my parents that I'm looking for my biological parents because I don't want hurt them? Of course, it, it didn't happen. So I didn't share with my parents until I found some very good clues, and I didn't share them until I was 23 years old when I found clues and information that my biological family was alive um, in Moscow.
And were they supportive of you at that time?
Yes, for sure. I told them like, "Hey, I think I found my biological mother in Moscow, and I think I'm going to Um, I'm traveling to Moscow in a couple of weeks to meet her. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but yes, of course they supported me. They will. They were. They were scared at the beginning. Of course, they were scared. I was 23 years old, traveling abroad to meet someone that I didn't meet before, someone that I didn't see a picture before, and they were very worried about my um, how I would feel. They were um, they they worried about my feelings and my emotions and how I would handle the situation. But of course, they supported me, and of course, they were proud that I was able to do it by myself. And I always I will share with other adoptees that when we, the adoptees, we want to find our biological families, when we want to search, is because at home we felt safe and we felt loved, and because we have that, we were able to um, looking for other families. And yeah, that's what I always share with adoptees. Yeah, it's not that, because many people, they think, maybe from the people who are not familiarized with adoption, maybe people would think that we adoptees, when we want to find our biological families, is because we don't love our families back in our countries, our families with, but that we don't love our adopted families. As that's not the case. I think you have to be very mature and very emotional, stable to try to find your biological family, doing it in a healthy way, and with emotional support with your friends, with the family. And of course, I recommend to anyone who is listening to this podcast about finding their roots or their families, that they have to do it along with therapy, no matter what. Don't do it by yourself. Don't do it alone. Don't put your own risk. Don't take a flight as I did with I was 23 years old, go into a country that you don't know the language, and try to find your biological parents by yourself. Yeah, yeah, that's my advice. Do it with
So
someone.
you did it all by yourself without the support, and
Yes.
that makes a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. It
Uh,
makes a difference because, but also I don't. I'm proud that I did that. I recognize that I made many mistakes. I was 21, 22, and 23 years old, and I traveled by myself to Moscow, completely alone. Well, when I landed in Moscow, I had someone who helped me to. Sorry, I had someone that helped me with the translation, to not meet in my biological mother house. Um, but yeah, I travel by myself. I do all of the research by myself. So that is a mistake. But in the other hand, I had the strength to do it in that time. Probably because I didn't have barriers. Probably because I didn't see the risks. And I say, okay, yes, let's do it, and let the life um, send us. I don't know the results of this story. But yeah, just please do it with someone.
was your mother expecting you? Did she know that you were coming, or was it a total surprise for her?
No, it wasn't a surprise. I was in contact with her through a Russian organization that helped me to mediate, and of course, a family friend whose name, no, sorry, she's Russian. She helped me with the translation, and she contacted with my biological mother. She sent her the information about me, that I was alive, I was looking for her. And of course she said, yeah, I would love to meet Ivan, and I would love to yeah, to meet him. Yeah, so it wasn't a surprise. It was a surprise when I reached out to her, and when someone reached out to her on behalf of me. And because I think biological mothers, they never forget about their kids, if they had to relinquish them, or social services decided that in that moment that mother or father, they couldn't have kids in that time. and and I always say that every time I mediate with biological mothers, what I see is they never forget, they don't try to forget. And sometimes when they give an adoption or they give to a hospital, they give the babies to someone to take care of them. I always say that in that time, in that year, in that month, in that day when she born or when she have a baby, when she had a baby, maternity wasn't an option for them, for her. And yeah, this is what it is. This is the life, and we don't have to blame anyone when we are looking for our origins. And it's something that I always tell to my clients or the people that I work with, and I also to the listeners of this podcast. Part of my job is to secure that the relationship we are building between the adoptee and the biological family, both parts are okay to do that, are okay to talk with, are okay to meet. Sometimes it's like a video call like that, and sometimes it's a reunion in person. But I always tell them, like, we have to be extremely careful. We don't want to hurt anyone, and I think this is the goal of the work that I do, is secure and mediate that both parts they agree to have a conversation, and after that they have to handle by themselves what to do with the relationship. But it's something that is very very similar that you are doing with your podcast, Janet. Is like putting people in contact, talk about adoption. We know that adoption is a very difficult topic to talk about, but you told me many times, I want you to answer the questions that you are um, glad to answer about. I want you to express yourself in a safe space. And yeah, this is my recommendation for adoptees and for biological families, that just meet, just reunite, how do you say, reunion? Meet
Yes, reunion.
together, reunion when you are okay to do that, when you feel that is the correct moment. Don't force yourself, because the consequences are probably not good for you.
So, being a biological mother myself, giving birth in 1970, that was a time when we were told to forget that we had a child, um, to put it out of our memories and just to continue with life and totally forget about the child. But you don't forget. You kind of, for me, you put them in a box, like, and you build these concrete walls around it, and you keep it safe. And there's never any talk about it after it's happened. Like my parents never talked about it. I never talked about it with my sister after he was born and he was adopted. There's there's no talk about it. I did tell my husband before we got married that I'd had a child before, but you keep it hidden, and then all of a sudden, I was married to my husband for 37 years and then lost him to cancer. And the following year, I lost my dad. But while I was cleaning out my dad's house, that was when I actually found a letter from the adoption agency looking for information about me, where I was. So I had to start in order to find my son. And when I contacted the adoption agency, I had to fill in all kinds of forms. I had notarized forms to say who I was. They did a search, and then I got a letter from them saying they were unable to find him. But they told me his name, and his name was Dwayne Tabinski. And I thought to myself, thank goodness it's not John Smith, because John Smith is such a common name that would have been hard to find. And I Googled him, and it's all a matter about timing for a lot of this, right? Okay. So when I Googled him, it came up on the screen. Someone had just sold him a house in Nashville. And I was able to click on his name because it was in blue, and it came up right with his Facebook page. So that's how I got to see my son for the first time, through his Facebook page.
Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. But as I say, it's all a matter of the right timing, and people have to be prepared for that. And I think it's really, really important for an adoptee to listen to the birth parent and not to assume anything prior to it, because they don't know the story. They hear what someone tells them, but that person might not have known the true story behind it in the first place. So it's really important that they listen to what the story is and understand. A lot of people, I gave my son for adoption because I had no future. I had no idea where I was going to be, what I was going to do. I wasn't marrying his dad. And at that point of time, a single mom, your child was a bastard. And that was the way it was. But there's other women that were in a position, they were younger than I was and didn't have a choice. The choice was taken from them. Or they were in an abusive relationship. And again, the choice was taken from them. So people really have to listen to understand that most of the time we're doing it out of love or we're being forced to do it. And I find that some people who are adopted, they have to have that capacity to listen. And so they have to be at that stage in their life where they can listen and are willing to understand. You agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think people who are not adoptees or adopted families or birth parents, they have to listen to us. They have to listen both sides of the three sides of the adoption. That is, birth parents, adoptees, and adoptee and adopted parents. Um, Something that you mentioned, it make it made me think and remind that for years and years and years and years, I heard many people around me saying that, well, why do you want to meet your birth parents? They didn't love you. They put you, and even comments like they put you in a garbage. They wanted to kill you. They didn't love you. They were horrible. Your birth parents, maybe they were like, I don't know, monsters. And this is the kind of comments that we adoptees we heard all the times about our biological families. And I don't know how to express and share with you, Janet, how difficult is to hear that um, statements, to hear that ideas, because you as a child, you don't have you don't have tools to think about the world of the adults. Even if you are a grown adult and an adult adoptee, sometimes you can't be you can't have empathy for your biological parents. Then it's so hard when you hear those comments because it's not real. Of course, there are some cases that parents are horrible and they wanted to kill their children. That's not my business, and it's not my business what kind of uh, parent you were in the past. My business and my concern is like, we are two human beings. We want to connect. Let's make it happen. And the past is the past. We know that we can't. The only thing that we know as a human beings is like we can't change the past. Well, that's not true, because if we're talking about adoption, we know the adoption agencies and social services and church and many other institutions or organizations, they change our documents, so they change our past. They change names, they change ages, they lied. Not all of them, but we know many adoptees, they have to face incorrect information in the documents, and so sometimes you can change the past. But what I was saying is like, in the present, we can't modify what we did in the past, and of course, we adoptees, we don't have to feel guilty about our lives. And um, as you mentioned, sometimes you don't have choice, and we don't have a choice. Human beings, as mammals, when we are scared, we 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 do things that in a normal situation we wouldn't do, like giving up your child. It's something that, if an adult, I'm sure that if my biological parents, if they had options in that time, if someone were with them in that time, supporting them, not being alone, probably they would have kept me with them. And as many other uh, birth mothers and birth fathers around the globe, that if they had resources in that time, not only, no, I'm not talking about um, financial resources, like support, like family support, neighbors, a cousin that can help you to feed the baby, maybe all of these people, they wouldn't have relinquished they their child. And Jeanette, for years I was involved in some nonprofits, nonprofits that created by adoptees to support other adoptees. In my case, in Spain, because it's the country I'm coming from, and it's the language that I speak, of course, and I know what it is to be adoptee and in Spain. Um, and this is something that we always debate, and it's always a topic of discussion. Like um, when we talk about international adoptions um, in other countries, like, well, what should we do with international adoptions? Should we try to pass laws to stop the international adoption, or should we try to work for those countries or for those societies or for those communities to have enough support to don't give up their their kids? Both of discussions, of course, is like a nightmare or a dream, because that will never happen. Um, we are human beings. We live in community, and we are surrounded by problems, sadly. But we always tell um, to my clients or the people that I'm helping with process their adoption or their journey to their countries or their origins. Like, don't feel guilty, and also don't blame your birth parents, because probably, as you said, they didn't have a choice. They didn't have another option, and you are alive, so you have to be proud that you are alive, and you have to accept where where you are. You have to accept that you had the chance to met again your birth parents, and you have to work with that. It will be very, very painful. It could be extremely painful, but it's your option to to work with that, and it's your option. And some other adoptees, they say, and they think, I'm completely fine. I don't want to meet my birth parents, or I don't want to know anything about my country or my culture or my origins, and that's completely okay. That's totally fine. You don't need to you don't need to find anyone if you don't want to. You don't feel that you need to. But if you need to, if there is something inside of you that are telling you, like, oh, I was wondering how my dad looks like, if or if I resemble with them or not. Just start your journey, and step by step, and you have the rest of your life to do that. You don't have to pressure yourself. You don't have to suffer. And if you're suffering, find help.
So let's circle back to your meeting with your mom for the first time. How did that go and how did it feel?
We met in my friend's apartment. It was in the south of Moscow. It was, to be honest, it was a very, very cold meeting. It was the first time I was seeing my birth mom. I didn't have any picture of her before, so it was like a shock at the beginning. The conversation went not that good as I expected. I expected to, because always we have in adoption this image, like, oh, everything is like a Disney movie end, like a happy end, like oh, everything is beautiful. We're going to hug ourselves, and but that didn't happen. It was a very, very cold meeting. I expect maybe too much. I didn't receive as much as I wanted from my birth mom, and I realized in that moment that I was in front of someone that suffered probably more than me because of the adoption. Because I grew up thinking that I had birth parents, but I don't know, and I still don't know. And I and I don't want even to be in those shoes. What is to lose a child? I cannot process that because I have never felt that. So when I met my biological mom, after 3 hours of meeting and dinner and conversation, I saw that I was talking with someone who was absolutely in pain. That she was in pain. She she got married again. She had another son that I'm in contact with. Um, but I saw someone that she was that she lost a child, and how you handle that situation in front of your adult child that you lost or you decided to lost 25 years ago. So it was a hard moment and a very cold moment at the same time.
I can tell you when the day that I met my son for the first time, he was in Nashville and I was on my way home from Florida. Had my son and daughter from my marriage with me, along with Jill's husband and two children. And we were standing outside the door. We were meeting him for breakfast. We were going to his house for breakfast. So we were standing out the door saying, what do we do? How do we greet him? And my youngest grandson came back, said, you better make up your mind because I rang the doorbell. So we didn't have a choice. And then when he came out, we all decided, hey, we hugged. That was it. That we're a family. We're going to hug.
Mm-hmm.
We were going for breakfast and we made it so that we could go for breakfast. So if we didn't hit it off, we could leave. We had an excuse to leave, to drive back home. But we ended up staying there until 11 o'clock that night, just telling stories all the time, and had a wonderful first meeting. One of the things he said was that they're not my stepbrothers or half brothers and sisters, they're my brother and sister. And so he accepted my other children with no problem, and they got along really well and had a great relationship over the 6 years we had together before we lost him for a second time.
Yeah, there are many stories out there of reunion that it was a succeed. And in my case, the beginning was hard, and I needed at least 10 years to um, make make it up the relationship with my biological mother, with phone calls, video calls, letters, and conversations. Very very hard conversations. Very hard conversations to navigate about why, when, who, everything that you can ask um, to someone, to your birth mother. And in that moment is when a concept starts to how to say to is when I created this concept that is the title of the book that I wrote, La genealogía del abandono. That is in Spanish. In English will be like the genealogy of the abandonment, because it took me like 10 years to find my roots and to write about the story of my Russian side, of my Russian family. And I found this is something that I can't disclose because it's the crucial part of the book. But I found that many of my ancestors, they suffered abandonment in two ways. Either they felt that they were abandoned, or they abandoned other people. And that was a common pattern in many branches of my genealogy tree. And when I found that, and because I trace ancestors for a couple of centuries back in Russia, and when I read about their lives through documents, I thought, well, I am not special, I am not special. And this tree, everyone in every single branch, in every single leaf, in every single root of that tree, they suffered. They suffer because of the war. They suffer because the wife passed away at birth. They suffer because two kids they were killed in the war. They suffer because of the genocides. They suffered, or they had to face consequences of poverty, or having multiple marriages. And that changed everything for me, because I thought I am not special. I am not the only one. Because when you are an adoptee, you think, oh my God, I'm suffering a lot because my life is so hard, because, so on and so on. But when you see what's going on out there with other families, with your own family back in the time, even with your adopted families and with biological family, when you see that every single one could feel that she or he was abandoned, or people that, as you mentioned, you didn't have any choice. Sometimes you had to work, sometimes you have to um, sometimes the army drafted you to go to the war and you never come back. And I saw many of those stories, and I put all this story together in this book that I hopefully um, that hopefully it will be translated in English in very very soon, so you can see the impact of the genealogy of abandonment in on you.
So I've got a question for you here. When you went back to Moscow to visit your mom, did Moscow seem familiar to you, or was it just a strange place?
I knew everything about Moscow because uh, for reading, I love reading. I spend um, most part of my time reading, and of course reading about Russia and about Moscow. I knew every single building, every single street, the history of everything, but I didn't have any memory about Moscow. I couldn't recognize anything because I didn't have memory when I was 1 year old. But I knew through history, I knew through books, I knew through classical Russian literature what was Moscow, the different episodes of the history, and I really love the city. I can't wait to come back and visit again after 10 years. I couldn't go back again, um, but it's an amazing city. It's beautiful. Um, yeah, I have very good memories of the city, and I knew this city, of course, through the pictures that I have, the photographies, the photographs, the images that I had, that my family took when I was a baby there, and they when they traveled a couple of times to meet me in that time. But no, I didn't have any memory because I was 1 year old when I left the city, and probably I never left the orphanage in that time.
Was it your mother who led you to your father?
um, Not at the beginning, but she did it after a few years of search. Um, she at the beginning she told me that my father had um, she told me his name. She told me his origin. He was Armenian from Armenia, and he was a young guy who emigrated from Armenia to Moscow to work. And but no, she didn't want to share as much as information. She didn't want to share information because probably it was the man that she really loved in that time, and it was so hard to say to share the story of someone that you loved. And I knew it was I knew it was loved. Yeah, that they loved each other because the first thing that she said, the first thing she did when she saw me, it was like, your eyebrows and your face and your hair is like your dad. She said that in Russian, but I could understand exactly what she said, and I understand that I was pretty similar to my dad. And when I find my biological father a few years after Moscow, I could see that she was right. Like, I am like a photocopy of my of my father. I have to say that I didn't have the opportunity to meet him in person yet, but I met my biological family, Armenian side, and I have an excellent relationship with all of them.
And that was your mirror, right? When you
Yeah.
when you met your Armenian side of the family, that was your
hmm
mirror.
Yeah, I went to Armenia in 2006, 2017 to do a research about the Armenian genocide. And at that time, is when I started to find actively and to try to look for clues to that led to my biological father. I ended up not finding him, but finding my sisters and brother, of course, half sisters and half brother. Um, my biological sister, she came all the way from Moscow to Spain to meet me the year before COVID, 2019, I think. And we traveled together in 2022, also with my wife. In that time, 2022, we traveled the three of us to Armenia to meet my biological grandma and aunts and uncles. Um, my siblings, my Armenian siblings, they live in Moscow. They live between Moscow and Armenia. And my grandma still lives in Armenia, and it's a country that I visited twice. I spent there a month in 2017, studying and researching, and I spent a couple of weeks in 2022, 2023. I forgot the dates, but yeah, it's also a beautiful country if you can Google it. And I also tell people that if you don't know where to go for vacation, just Google Armenia and take a flight and go. It's beautiful.
How would you define yourself today as to who you are?
That's a very that's a very difficult question. I don't know. I don't know. I think in Spanish. I am truly and a very proud Spanish person, and of course European. And part of my blood is Russian. Part of my identity is Russian. Part of my traditions and part of my heritage is also Armenian. Part of my blood and my face and and who say my resemblance is Armenian. But now I'm living in Chicago, so my identity, I have many layers of identity. So this is how I would define myself. Like, I know someone that belongs to many places, and I have the opportunity, I'm happy to belong to many places, and all of these places make me happy, and at the same times all of these places make me a little bit sad sometimes.
What does belonging mean to you now that you've found both biological mom, biological dad, and your adoptive parents?
I think belonging is to be proud of who you are in different moments of your life and recognize your heritage, recognize the privilege of being alive, and be able to choose what kind of belonging do you want to, and where do you want to belong in different times of your life. Maybe one day, for example, in my life, I am very happy to celebrate an Armenian food festival here in Chicago. I am happy when I am surrounded by my Armenian friends here. I am extremely happy when I read Russian literature and when I learn Russian every single morning of my life online with a teacher in Russia just for 15 minutes. That makes me belong. Um, uh, when I am with my Spanish friends here in Chicago, cooking together and sharing together, that's belonging. And sharing the life with my wife and starting a new family that a new member of the family is coming in a few weeks. We're having a son, so that will be another episode of my life that we have maybe to make another podcast in a few years. What is like what is like to be a adoptee and biological father as well. So I don't know if I answer all of your questions. I hope the listeners, they could understand everything we talk about, and if they have any questions, please reach me out. My website, I'm sure Janet, you will write the website if someone wants to talk with me, and yeah, I will be happy.
As an adoptee, have you ever considered adoption for yourself, for children?
No, I wouldn't adopt newborns or babies, but if it's an option, I wouldn't mind to become like a foster family for teenagers in need, someone that needs a home, someone that needs a family. I wouldn't mind to explore that option, but um, probably, I don't know, probably I wouldn't adopt. No.
That's the first time I've asked that question. Somebody who was an adoptee, because I just started to wonder, you've been through adoption, you had loving parents who adopted you. And I wondered if you would want to give that to someone else.
But not as my permanent child, just as a family that someone in need. They need family for some time, for some months, for some years. Then we can help that child, but always having the door open for that person to leave whenever they want, and probably telling that person that you belong to someone else, you belong to your biological parents, you belong to your, I don't know, to your city or to your country. But I wouldn't make those children belong to me for the rest of their lives through adoption.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Thank you. You've been in Chicago now, you said, for 4 years.
Yes.
Um, you are working to help people with international adoptions, or do you work with people in the US as well to help them find their biological parents?
I work with anyone in the world who are looking for their biological families. Most of my search, of course, is Russia, Russian-speaking countries. Also, I am helping people from Moldova, Ukraine, Armenia, with roots in those countries because it's the countries that I did the research about my family. So it's for me it's easier to do. I'm working with anyone in the world in English and Spanish. So if you don't speak English or Spanish, it will be very hard for us to communicate. But I'm not only trying to find documents or their families. I'm helping, for example, a couple of women from here from the U.S. with roots in Russia, just to navigate a conversation with their adopted parents because they are so afraid that if they tell that sorry they are afraid in the moment that they to their parents that I'm looking for my roots in Russia. They are afraid that their parents will be so mad at them and feel abandoned again. So I'm helping also people to navigate those conversation and also I'm helping adopted families who are facing some kind of problems or difficulties with their adoptees to find a solution. Just have a conversation, talk about problems, and discuss about adoption topics that is very very hard when you are inside of the adoption, when you are inside of the family, and it's so hard to navigate certain topics or conversations because you are afraid to lose your family. That's the most important. That's the most difficult part in adoption conversation is because we're afraid to lose our families again. Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be difficult. I've talked to a lot of people who have been adopted, had great lives, and then when they're looking for their biological parents, they find their biological parents, but they lose their biological parents um, because one lady, her biological mom was 16 when she gave birth to her. And she was like me. She was told to forget that you had a child. She ended up marrying the Robin's dad, and they never had any more children. When Robin found them, she was able to go and see them. But every time she left, it was like they were having to give her away again and forget about her again. So it was too traumatic for the parents to get through that. So there's so many different things, which is why I say it's so important to listen to the stories and to know what everybody went through and how it affected them at the time, right? But it's something that we all need to talk about. We all need to get it out in the open. And I find birth mothers have a very hard time talking about it and telling their stories because of the
Yeah,
fact that they were told to forget and to
there
hide.
are
And
not.
I know when I found my son the first time I actually spoke to him, and he told me that he was okay, he was happy. He said, "Thank you for giving me life." And then he told me I had 3 grandchildren and 5 great grandchildren. And then it was just like this tsunami of feelings, like it was overwhelming what I went through just in that particular moment when everything just comes flooding back. So it's very difficult for birth moms to go through this and to have to relive that trauma in their life, because that's what it was. It was a trauma that they were told to forget about. And just, I can't even explain what it was to go through that. It's almost
Yeah,
impossible to.
because in adoption we're talking about three people or three uh, parts that all of them they are traumatized in certain way. So the baby who lost the parent and the birth parents who lost a child and the adopted parents that they are mourning the child, the biological child that they couldn't have had. So we're talking about three pieces of this institution, or whatever the word is for called adoption. We're talking about three people or three families or three companies that they are very traumatized for losing, and it's so hard to have a conversation when you have a trauma with someone who has trauma that is similar to you, because it's um, related because of the adoption, but it's not the same. It's not the same. That the feeling that we adoptees have when we think that we lost our families is not the same feeling that birth parents with they feel that they lost a child, and also it's not the same emotions when adopted families they talk about yeah, because we couldn't have children, biological children. Now we needed to adopt. Our option was adoption. So it's three figures, three components that are they are mourners. They lost something in their lives, and I think it's something that you have to live with that for the rest of your life, and you have to accept that you lost something and just live with that.
And going back, you're right. We can't change our past, right? We can't change what's happened in the past, but we can look forward to the future.
Yeah,
And to all
for
those
sure.
adoptees out there that are looking to find their families and want to find their families, you can contact Ivan here. And if your family is over in Russia or in that part of the world, he's more than happy to help and give you information and help
For
you
sure.
navigate that journey, because it is a journey. So thank you, Yvonne. I really appreciate you being here today. I appreciate you telling your story. I appreciate all the help you're giving to all the adoptees that are out there and to their families, respective families. Everybody, we all need that. We need to take away the stigma of adoption. I'm Janet
Thank you so
Monroe.
much, Janet.
Thank you for being here, Yvonne. And this is Roots and Branches Adoption Stories on KFred Radio. If you'd like to contact me, you can reach me at 615-870-6433 or connect me through our website at www.rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com. Till next time.
Thank you so much, Janet.